Hello and welcome to my creative castle. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for choosing to come back, hang out, and spend a little bit of your day with me. And thank you for your patience while I briefly introduce myself to anybody who might be new to my channel. Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies, and I also happen to have been born visually impaired, legally blind, and completely colorblind. So I mostly knit and crochet by feel. And so don't worry, yarn lovers, there's going to be yarn in this video today, right? If you are blind or visually impaired, I'm holding up yarn, which by the way, on this channel, I do my very best to keep the internet inclusive of other visually impaired people, because if you don't know yet, if you somehow missed it, on my YouTube channel, October is Blindness Awareness Month, and so we are going to talk about other blindness issues during the month of October, because I feel like education is really important, okay? So yes, there's going to be some cooking videos, and I know not all of you are here for the cooking, and it is okay if you don't watch them, by the way. They'll be there for you if you ever need it, okay? So but today's video, we are going to talk about some blindness and vision topics. We're going to talk about organizing our yarn. We're going to talk about color management, you know, and so that's blindness stuff, but you might be able to use some of that stuff with, even if you're not visually impaired, okay? So one thing I talk about on my channel is that according to the World Health Organization, there are about 16 million people on the planet, 16 million, can you believe that, who are considered legally blind. And so there's a lot of us amongst you. Yeah, really. And of course, I know that, you know, a lot of people experience changing eyesight, deteriorating eyesight every single year. Some of it's age-related health conditions, age-related macular degeneration. Sometimes it's genetic conditions, or somebody might have a gene for a condition that's going to cause blindness overnight, like Usher's syndrome, which is actually this deaf blindness as a genetic condition. I've known several people who have that, and other people lose their sight, like suddenly, right? A traumatic experience. They're sighted and driving one day, and the next day they're totally blind. I have friends who've lost their eyesight in car accidents, and I actually have had several friends who've lost their sight to gunshot wounds. So people lose their sight for, you know, a whole reason, so many reasons, the whole spectrum of reasons, right? And so whether it's suddenly or gradually, it's likely going to involve a little bit of an adjustment process. So that's why I'm taking it upon myself to talk about visual impairments this month, and why I do try to describe things on my channel to be inclusive of other visually impaired people. A lot of people on social media are not. I go to the channels like Creative Grandma and Crystal, because they describe their colors really well. It's the same thing on social media and Facebook, by the way, right? Like, I'm really on Facebook that much anymore, but you know, when I ask some of my friends questions about their pictures, I have those that will really describe the bird and the colors to me, and guess what? I love that. I thank them. I ask them more questions. I continue to talk to them. But there are other people on social media who might ask them what color a car is, and they might hit like, but they don't have the decency to even respond. So you know what? I'm like, okay, clearly you're not interested in including visually impaired people on the internet, or even your life, because you're so important and you're so busy and whatever, right? And it's not that they don't know I'm visually impaired. They actually know that. They just can't be bothered to get back with me. So guess what? I'm like, you know what? I don't got time for you either. It's okay. We can still pretend like we're Facebook friends, but we don't have to really talk or be friends anymore, right? I mean, that's really how it is. You just move on, right? You move on, right? You're like, no thanks, bye-bye, right? So on my YouTube channel, I definitely try to include colors for people. Now, I don't always get the color right, because I am colorblind myself. And if I don't know, I'll just be like, I think it's green, but I don't know. And if I do forget to say it, because I know that we're all human, and sometimes we do forget to describe things because we're tired or life, right? It's okay to ask me. If you're out there and you're visually impaired, it's okay to be like, what color was that? You know, and I'll do my best to get back with you and describe something if I know. And maybe other people who are viewers can help you with that as well. But we're going to have lots of yarn, lots of show and tell today. And one of the things I want to talk about, and why I feel like this is an important topic to talk about, even though I know a lot of people might not watch this video because you're like, I'm just here for yarn. I'm not really interested in visual impairment stuff. That's okay. It'll be there for those who need it, right? And that's what I intend it for when people start to have changing eyesight. I want it to be there for them, right? So I hear from a lot of people to say things like, I don't crochet with black anymore because I can't see it, right? And so I know that it's a challenge for a lot of people. And I've even heard some people say that they give up knitting or they give up crocheting because they can't see anymore. And I understand where temporarily you might do that, right? When you experience a vision change, you're probably really focused on your immediate needs, like, you know, getting around your own house, right? Like navigating your home and making sure that you have, you know, how to prepare food and, you know, get dressed and look presentable, right? Like put your clothes on, make sure do my clothes match. And first of all, occasionally, I still go out wearing 2 socks that don't match. And I've been visually impaired my whole life, okay? So sometimes it happens, right? But I definitely try to share the experience that I've had through living through 47 years of a lifetime of visual impairments with others. And so one of the first things that I want to talk about is these big bags, right? I know when you see my videos, a lot of people are probably like, boy, those bags are noisy. And I know that they are. And I apologize. I wish that they weren't so noisy. But they're kind of essential when you're visually impaired, okay? They kind of are. And so for me, I know that I can keep my yarn separated. I get the 1 gallon Ziploc bags and I get the 2 gallon Ziploc bags. And I buy them all off the Amazon. I love the 2 gallon Ziploc bags. I just ordered another pack of them. So organization is really key. I think that applies to everybody, right? In my opinion, even if you're sighted, I really think you should organize and separate your yarn. Now, obviously, if I had the space for a beautiful yarn wall behind me, I'd be all about that. I wish that I had a yarn wall at my home, but I don't, right? So all of my yarn is stored up in boxes and bins, right? And so it's all bagged up. And so definitely these little Ziploc bags to help you stay organized are your friend, okay? So that's the first tip that I have. Keep your yarn separated. And then another thing that we've talked about, I actually have a whole video called Tuesday Tech, where I take you, I have so much of this cotton. Cotton is from Knit Picks and We Crochet. It is 70% Tanguise cotton, 30% linen. It's a DK weight yarn, right? And I have so much of it in so many different colors that I knew I couldn't make a video about it without really organizing it better and giving it some good labels, right? And so one thing that I did is I went ahead and printed out these really large print labels. Now, I'm not totally blind, but I am completely colorblind. I'm never going to be able to tell apart a lot of these shades of blue. And I have a lot of shades of blue in this particular yarn. It comes in a lot of blues. I have it in Planetarium. I have it in Nightfall. I have it in Harbor and Hydrangea and Indigo Bunting. And guess what? They're all shades of blue that I'm never going to be able to distinguish from each other, right? So I can still read the large print under certain circumstances. This is a 36-point font. It's in bold, and that is something that I can sometimes still read under the right lighting condition. So that's something I would highly, if you can't read the colors, the yardage, if it's a DK, like I can still read the large print on this label. It says cotton, right? And that's something that I can still read. But for me to get the yardage and the fiber content of this yarn is way too challenging. And that's information. When I'm going hunting through my stash, right, that's information that I need. Now, in that Tuesday Tech video, I do show you how I use my technology, how I use different apps, right, and try to kind of, you know, figure out what I'm dealing with. But I also brailled these, and I showed you that on that video. This is Harbor, so that says H-A-R-B-O-R, all right. And so, well, it says Kotlin. I just put the basic in Braille. I just put Kotlin, and then I put the color. And that symbol there is AR together. Braille definitely has shorthand in it. So I would definitely say to everybody, separate and sort your yarn into, you know, bags and containers. For me, color and, you know, type of yarn works best. If you can, you know, I recommend and like the printing out of the large print labels. But sometimes, like I have this particular skein, which I have used both Braille on it and giant Sharpie, right? Sharpies are your friend. There's nothing wrong with writing with a Sharpie. I wrote in Braille on this, Honey Bunny. I wrote the color, which is caramel, on it. This is from Hobby. There's nothing wrong with writing on your yarn labels, but I would highly, highly recommend that, you know, you get your yarn naked, right, before you write on it. I'm just saying. So for me, I've taken a lot of these labels off already and brailled them on individual skeins. So also, those printed out labels are great when you have yarn that's not open yet, right? Like if I have a color, these are open because I've been using them. But if I had yarn that I had bought, but I wasn't planning on using it, then you don't even have to open the package of yarn. Just type out that label, stick it in there, and it's good to go for years, right? So, but these, I've taken the labels off to Braille, and if you're going to use that, you know, Sharpie technique, at a minimum, Sharpies are going to bleed through, right? We know that. So at a minimum, I would recommend that you stick your fingers or another piece of like cardboard in between there, or just get your yarn naked for a moment, right? And write on it with the Sharpie, right? Because Sharpies can bleed through, and we don't want to accidentally get black marker on our blue yarn. That's a big old sad face, right? It's a sad face. So we don't want to do that. But you can use, there's a number of ways that you can use Braille just on your yarn, right? And so let's talk about that in terms of, once we open our yarn, let's talk about the different ways that we can use Braille, right, to either just put it in the package or to label each skein. Because there's multiple ways that you, with writing, you can probably do a Sharpie or print out a large print label. Now for Braille, if you read Braille, right, there's 3 ways that I have at my fingertips to use to put some Braille labels on stuff. So what I use on my Braille, on my yarn labels and on my cardstock there, I did print that out on cardstock, a nice thick heavy paper so that I can punch the holes out in Braille, right? You can Braille on regular printer paper, but it's not as sturdy, it's not as strong. So I use this really old-fashioned tool called a slate and stylus, where you literally just stick the paper in there, close it up. But the thing about that is that you do have to start, in order to read, let me take that label back out of this. Let me take this back out. So here is the color Ivy, right? It's the color green. So I haven't opened my Ivy green yet. I haven't used it yet. So, but when you want to type that out, you stick the paper inside of the slate and stylus. And in order to get the letters to come up raised to where you can read left to right, then when you punch them out, you actually have to start on the right, right? You have to start on the right because you're punching them out, right? And then you flip it over. And so you have to write from the right to the left, and you have to punch out every single character backwards from the right to the left. So, for example, the color ivy is I-V-Y, right? So the I has to be punched out backwards, and that in Braille is the letter E. That's right. To get the I on the ivy, you gotta punch out the letter E backwards, so that when it's flipped over, you have an I. And so I know that even for people who've been blind their whole life, right? They're like, no, right? It's cumbersome. It takes serious mental work. Like, I can't do a slate and stylus all the time. You got to be sharp. You got to think through every single letter. You got to put it, you got to transpose it. You got to punch it out backwards so that when you flip it over, it comes out the right way. And so if you're just struggling to read Braille, probably you're looking at a slate and stylus and you're like, I'm struggling to read Braille from the left to the right. Never mind, punch it out backwards. So I get that. It's clunky. It's, sort of an archaic, right, means of doing it. But you can do it that way. So know that you can. Now, that's what I do with my Braille, with my labels, right? Like when I wrote that caramel on the honey bunny yarn. I've already lost it, right? We're not surprised. Are we surprised that I lost the thing of yarn on the bed? No, I do that all the time, right? In my videos, I'm like feeling around for something. I'm like, it was right there, right? Happens all the time. So that is one way that you can Braille them. The other way, I have a whole YouTube short talking about my Braille label maker, how I use it on my microwave, on my appliances. And of course, I use my Braille label maker in the kitchen all the time for my spices, right? Like I brought him some spices here. We got one here that says thyme, right? We got one here that says coriander, right? We got one here that says curry. So I use my Braille label maker in my home all the time. And just like I said, Braille has shorthand. This little symbol here, that's the TH, right? Because Braille in itself is super, super bulky. And so it's really important to try to condense it and have like a little code. So even this, like this little symbol right here and the coriander, that's the letter A-N-D. That could be by itself. That'd be the word and. Together, it's just in the middle of the word coriander. This little symbol here, that's the E-R, okay? So I use my Braille label maker all the time. You can also just buy that on the Amazon, right? So, but Braille, you can buy the Braille label maker. You can buy the Braille tape. It's just like a, print label maker pretty much. And if you are visually impaired and you have a sighted person that wants to help you, there is print on the label maker so they can actually see what they're typing, so they can help you with that, right? And then your tape will come through the top there. But I'm going to be honest with you, the tape is kind of pricey in my opinion. Now, obviously, it's not like super expensive. It's not like gold or something, but it's kind of expensive. And so the truth is, I would rather use a slate and stylus than constantly reuse my tape, right? Or they constantly have to keep going through the tape because it's expensive in my opinion. So for me, it works better to use the slate and stylus than use the tape. But if you're new to Braille, you could spend the money on the tape. I am so thrifty and cheap with my Braille tape. I'm gonna be honest with you. These spice bottles with the Braille labels. You want to know a secret about me? You guys know I love a yarn sale, right? You know I love to save money wherever I can. These spice bottles, they're probably 20 years old, okay? When they're empty, I rinse them out and then I dry them out for like days to make sure they're thoroughly dry. And then I take the new spice and I put it into the old bottle with the Braille label on it. Okay, that's how, if you want to know how I save money. I mean, if you save money on Braille tape, you can buy more cashmere yarn. I'm sure of that, right? Save money on Braille tape, buy alpaca yarn. That's where I'm going, right? So Is it really that expensive? Probably not. I'm probably making more of a big deal of it than is necessary. But that's just how I operate. I'd rather save the money on things like Braille tape, right? And reuse it. So obviously, if you put Braille tape like on these pieces of paper that I have in here, you could certainly reuse it. Like if you were putting the Braille tape on the paper on the skeins, well, then when you got your new yarn in, I mean, I guess you could take off the new label if you use the skein and put the old labels back on. I mean, that's one thing you could do. Hadn't thought of that before. That's a possibility. But these little printed out labels, I mean, you could just take a piece of paper or like an index card or something, and put your Braille tape on there with your info, and then just keep it in the bag and keep, you know, as you restock, right? We restock our yarn, right? You could certainly do that with your Braille tape by just putting it on like a little index card or something in the bag. So there are ways to do that for sure, right? So that's another way. And another thing I want to talk to you about with the Braille is that you can, like these large print labels and the 36-point font, bold, all caps, right? I print that out on my home printer. Now, they do make something called a Braille embosser, which is just a Braille printer, but they're super expensive. Like, I know very few people who actually have one in their home because they're pricey. They're like $2,000 or something or more. They're really, really expensive to have a Braille printer. So most people do not have them in their home. They're really hard to come by, but they are out there in the community. So if you're a crafter, probably your best places to find them would be like a independent living aid center, your state department of services for the blind, and even some colleges and universities that do have Braille printers. The larger schools that have a population of blind students will have Braille printers on their campuses. So that's a possibility, possibly as well. I can honestly tell you that. Like when I was in graduate school, I don't know if you know that yet, but I did attend graduate school, got my master's and doctorate degree in psychology. Thought I would be working as a therapist for 40 years. Did not think I'd be sitting here on YouTube knitting and crocheting. I didn't go to college for 10 years to do that. But here I am, right? So, who knew, right? Thought I would just sort of be an anonymous therapist, and you kind of have to live a quiet life as a therapist, right? I mean, you can't really go out and talk, especially if you live in a small town. You can't be like, I mean, you can socialize, but, you know, you can't, like, even acknowledge your clients in public unless they acknowledge you. And, you know, it's a one-way conversation, kind of, because you have to pretend like you don't know their personal stuff. I mean, you know, it's awkward. I've certainly had clients come up and say hello to me in public, but, you know, which is totally cool. I'm cool with it. It's on them because I can't even see them. Which I do tell them, by the way, I'm like, there's a benefit of having a therapist that's mostly blind, right? You can like walk right by me in the store and there's no awkward because I don't see you. So if you say hi, that's on you, right? But it's fine if they do, by the way. If you're a former client, that's fine. But anyways, when I went to graduate school, I wrote my dissertation, and it was a survey of people who use guide dogs, right? And so I knew most of the people who use guide dogs are going to want or need that option of that survey in Braille. Yeah, and I was like, how am I going to do that, right? I'm not going to type out every single survey with a slate and stylus. No. So my small school was a private small school. They did not have a Braille embosser, but they had the same network of shared services with Portland State University. And they are a large enough school that they do have a Braille embosser in their school campus library. And so I was able to go into that school campus library, connect my computer to their system, and then just print out my several copies, right? I showed them my ID from my school, so that we share resources, right? We can check out books from each other's libraries. We check out books, so we share resources. And then they let me use their Braille printer, and I was able to print out my surveys. So there are Braille printers in the community, whether or not they'll let you use them to print out, labels to organize your Braille. I don't know. Your yarn, I mean, right? To organize your yarn. I don't know, but they're out there. So there's that for sure. And then the other thing I was going to talk about that you absolutely can use, right, is Braille clothing labels, which I also buy off the Amazon, right? So this is a little top that I have here, and just pinned inside with just a plain old safety pin is a label that says BL, or no, it says BK, excuse me, BK, and that is for black. And so I know, and they're also printed with print, so if you have a sighted person who's helping you, which you really do need a sighted person usually to help you, right? Like, I struggle sometimes to get the Braille clothing labels on my clothes when I don't have somebody sighted around to help me be like, is this purple? Is this teal? Is this blue? Right? Like, I sometimes do need that. So the reality is that because I safety pin them in there, you know, you probably should or could take the safety pins out when you're wearing your garments, but I'm always worried I'm going to not get the pins back on there and not get the right ones on the right thing. So the reality is I often leave my tags, my Braille safety pin tags, on my clothes all day. And yes, sometimes you might see me here on the bed and I'm like scratching or itching right at my neck or my back. And sometimes it's because I got allergies and I'm itchy and I'm scratchy. But sometimes it's because my Braille clothing tag might be itching me just a little bit. Might be poking me in the wrong place, right? Still got my Braille label on my shirt today. That says dark purple, right? So, but you can use Braille clothing labels on in your yarn, right? You can add, now they're not going to have all the colors, right? This says GRL, so that stands for light green. And then there's also ones in here that will say GRD. That's going to be your dark green, right? And so for some yarns, for some people, that's going to be enough, right? Like for me, this with this Brava blanket behind me is worked in Brava Bulky. The dark green is called Dublin. The light green is called Peapod. That might be enough for you depending on your yarn, right? But there are, like for me with the Cotton, like I said, I've got like 4 to 5 shades of blue. So even though the clothing tags do have a dark blue and a light blue, depending on your yarn and the type of yarn it has, that may or may not be enough to manage that color out of your whole yarn collection, right? But it might be. It depends. There are some yarns where I don't even have them in light blue, right? I just have them in dark blue. Like the Comfy worsted, I only have that in Planetarium, right? I only have that in Ivy, the dark blues and the dark greens. I don't even have those in light blues and light greens. But then there's other yarns where I get a lot of the baby blues, I get the clarity, I get the mint greens, because I want to get the pastels to do baby stuff, right? Like I just bought the I'm trying to think. I know that I have some yarns where I have bought the mint greens for baby projects, and I've bought those pale baby blues, but I can't think right now off the top of my head. But those are also ways that you can label your yarn and sort your yarn with Braille, okay? So then I wanted to talk about like organizing our projects as well. So, for example, now I am not totally blind. Got no idea if I'll ever become totally blind. Don't know. So, for me, I just did these socks, right? You just saw these socks. These socks are done in black and orange. Now, I can still tell apart black and orange, but it is difficult for me when it's really bright out, right? Like in the day when the sun's coming right through that window in the afternoon. I really struggle even at times to still see the black and the orange. And so that is this my, no, that is not the orange. That is not the orange, May. Let's see what this is. Okay, So I did these in the Brava Baby DK in the orange and black. And so what I did to make those socks is I took one of my orange, there's lots of orange labels in the clothing, Braille clothing tags, and guess what? I don't really wear a lot of orange. It's not a good color for me. My mom's pretty much told me that my whole life. Like, orange is not your color, girl, right? So, I've only got like 1 or 2 pieces of clothing that really have a lot of orange in it. So guess what? I have a whole bag of orange Braille clothing labels that are not in use. And so these socks, they were the perfect time and the perfect opportunity for me to just use one of these Braille clothing labels. And so they've got the little hole in them for the safety pins. Well, guess what? A interlocking stitch marker still fits through that little hole in there the same way, right? It does. You can just like pop that into there and it works. You can just like stick it in there, and then you can take your yarn and you can just put that on there. If you have the end of your yarn, you can obviously just stick it on there. If you're in the middle of your project, you can just open up your stitch marker, clip it on there, right? And so you can do that. And the good thing about using, like, you know, if you're knitting, right, of course we have locking stitch markers, like what to put it on at the beginning of the project. You could. I tend to think the interlocking ones that you can take off are probably better, especially if you've done color work knitting before. Because if you know, you got to twist your yarns, right? When you're knitting with color, you got to twist your yarns up. And so after a while, if you do that, you know your yarns get tangled, right? And so then you got to sit there and you got to untwist and untangle your yarn. And sometimes this little clippy guy, I'm not going to lie to you, it got really tangled, and I was like, just unclip it. Just unclip it, untwist the yarn, and then clip it back onto there. So I would really recommend that you do use the interlocking ones as opposed to sticking a fixed stitch marker on there at the beginning, just so that it makes it so much easier in the untangling process, right? So for me, obviously I could have put one of these Braille markers on the orange, the OR for the orange, and I could have put the BK on there for the black. I didn't, and the reason for that is with just the 2 colors, if only one has it on there, I don't even have to read the Braille, right? You can feel it. There's a little bit of a weight to it. So, and you're going to hear it, right? You're going to hear it on there. You're going to hear the stitch marker. You're going to hear it clank against the Braille label, right? And so all you have to do is kind of like pick up one of your strands of yarn, and you're going to feel the weight of that marker, and you're going to hear it. And so if you're just dealing with 2 colors, you'll easily be able to know, okay, the orange has the Braille little label on it. And you know, even if you didn't have a Braille label, you could probably even clip like a safety pin to one yarn, right? So if you're like, I don't read Braille, I don't have Braille labels, but I'm really struggling to see, you could probably even just clip a safety. I've been known to use a safety pin for a stitch marker before, okay? So you could certainly do that. That's an option. So for me, when I have knit, I struggle to do projects. I know that I would struggle to do projects that are multicolored, okay? And I mean multi, when I say multi, I mean more than 2, right? In one row especially. So I tend, when it comes to knitting, I tend to do things like the striped socks. If you're brand new to color work knitting, whether you're sighted or blind, I highly recommend that you start with just something this simple, like these socks, where it's just 2 colors. You just, change colors at the beginning of the row. You work for 8 rounds, you change colors. There's no color changing within the project. Now, I have been known to do this thing. You know I'm a hockey fan, right? You now know that. So I did do this puck this hat. Did not design it, by the way. There is a link to the Ravelry tutorial on my Start Something Saturday video. But this is just holly berry and white in the Knit Picks We Crochet Swish DK. Right? And so for this, I can still see the white and the red, but this is another project that if you have to have enough sight to either read the color chart, because there is a color chart for this, Or, you know, if you even kind of know what you're, I didn't even look at the chart the whole time. When I made this, once I knew what it was supposed to say, I didn't even know, because my eyes, I really have a lot of issues. I'm more cross-eyed. I got nystagmus in all three forms. My eyes kind of, I don't have control over my eyes and my eye muscles. Like, just kind of bobble around in my head. And so for me to look at a visual graphic like that, at a chart, sometimes it can really move around on me. And I can think I see something where it's at, and I don't, and my eyes get all a mess, you know, anyways. And so I am not going to lie to y'all. More than once, I had to rip out some of this color work and go back and fix it. I think even on the P, like I missed a little bar on the P. And so, you know, just because I know what the letter P looks like, I was doing it in my head and then I forgot the little bar there. So that can happen either with your eyes visually or because you're working it from memory. That can happen. So I tend, when I knit, to stick to projects that have 2 colors or that might only have 2 colors per row, right? I'll be honest with you, I have never before knit a project that involves more than 2 colors. I'm thinking about trying one that has 3, right? But I don't know. For me, I'm like, is that going to be too much for me to manage? And it might. I don't know. So let's talk about the crochet blanket behind me, okay? So this particular blanket is crocheted. This is a free YouTube tutorial by Glenda at Creative Grandma, and it's called the Victorian Star. It's in 3 YouTube videos, and it's in the Knit Picks We Crochet Brava Bulky. It's in 6 different colors. It's in brindle. It's got 2 different browns on it. Brindle. I'm trying to think what the other brown. Sienna, and then 2 greens, pea pod, and Dublin and red and canary. Okay, well, I still have, let's see, that's not the one that has the Braille on it. I still have, what I did for that is I kept my yarns for that project in their separate bags at all times. And then this is one of the projects where I specifically brailled the labels on each skein of yarn, right? Took the labels off the yarn and I brailled the label, and this says Brava Bulky in, let's see, what color is this? This is the brindle, right? And so, oh no, that is the sienna. Excuse me, that's the sienna. And it's the same thing. I still have a lot of that yarn from that project, right? This is the pea pod, right? It'll say Brava Bulky in pea pod, right? And so when you're working a multicolor project, the good thing about this blanket is you only change colors during the round. You're not trying to work 2 different colors in one round. And so definitely for me, that was a good intro to color work. Was okay, you just have the 1 yarn out, you take the 1 yarn out, you label all of your skeins that you're going to be using with Braille first, right? And then you keep all those skeins in their own little separate Ziploc bag. Now you can still I could still have like a 1-gallon Ziploc bag with a couple of pea pod, couple of canary, and then put them all together in one big project bag, like the big clear plastic project bag that I'm holding up, right? You could absolutely do that. And that's what I kind of did, was have like, you know, here on the bed with me, one bag that had, you know, like 1 or 2 in canary and 1 or 2 in pea pod, that kind of a thing, right? You know, I didn't have like the entire 10-pack of canary and pea pod and sienna. I didn't even have a 10-pack of brindle, okay? I didn't, but just have, you know, those skeins labeled ahead of time with your project bag together, and then keep all those separately. So when you need a color, you take off the label, you attach that yarn to your hook, and then when you're at the end of your round and you're done with that color and you tie off, you make sure and you get that skein back in the bag right before you start your next color. So that's definitely something I would highly, highly recommend, is that it's the same thing like with this skirt that I just designed in the Kotlin, right? It's in the Nightfall, it's in the Harbor, it's in the Indigo Bunting. Was for me because I didn't even have to go back to another color. That made it really easy for me, right? I did think about striping this back and forth with the two different colors, and I was like, you know what, that's gonna get too complicated for your little brain to keep track of. So I was like, just color block it and make it a fade, right? Now I'm not saying I wouldn't do a multicolored stripe project like that in the future, but I kind of wanted a fade anyways. I wanted it to be oceany, I wanted a fade. But if you want to stripe it, it's just going to be a matter of, you know, okay, making sure that you keep those yarns straight. But for me, it was really easy. It was like, okay, I'm done with the Harbor. Now I can just take the Harbor like to the yarn room, right? I'm done with it. I don't even have to have it here on the bed with me to confuse me anymore. And I kept the Nightfall here with me because I was still designing the top in my head, right? So the Nightfall didn't leave me. But once I was done with the Harbor, I could bag that up and get it out of the room. Didn't even have to worry about getting it confused when I might need another skein of the Indigo Bunting, right? So there's lots of ways that you can do that. And of course, when you design your own stuff, like my orange and black socks that I designed myself, or this skirt, then that also makes it a lot easier to manage color, right? You can choose how many colors you want to work with and how many colors you can handle and how many color changes you want. But projects like Glenda's blanket behind me are certainly doable. It's just about having a strategy ahead of time to be organized ahead of time, right? Getting your skeins labeled ahead of time in Braille so that you can easily keep them, and then keeping them put it, as soon as you're done, as soon as you cut the yarn and tie it off, you get that little label back onto it with the Braille on it and get it back in its own separate Ziploc bag. So that's huge. That is huge in my opinion in staying organized and managing your stash and just managing color work projects in general. And then the other thing that I want to talk about, I know this video is super long, right? Super long. Sorry about that. It's just learning Braille, right? Most people who lose their eyesight later on in life, obviously they don't know Braille, right? Now, I was born visually impaired. I was also mainstreamed in public school, and because I do have enough sight to still read large print, it's for short periods of time. And of course, I knew I was going to college and I was going to have a lot of textbooks and have to do a lot of research and journal articles and tiny, tiny, tiny print. And I knew that there was no way that I was going to be able to do all that reading in tiny print. Now, of course, I didn't do all that reading in Braille, but I knew realistically I was going to need some Braille. And so the reality is that in school anymore, even for kids who are born with less sight than I am, they're not really teaching Braille as much because it's expensive, it's bulky, right? You have to bring in a specialist to teach it. And so a lot of school districts don't want to pay for it. I'm just telling you now, if your child has a visual impairment and they're still in this school district, you should demand it, okay? If your child is that visually impaired that they have an IEP because of their visual impairment, you should demand it. I told the school district when I was 17, I said, I am losing sight, and I may or may not be able to read large print my whole life. And then I'll be illiterate. You'll have graduated me and I will be illiterate. I won't know how to read anymore. And so you need to teach me Braille. And so they did. So sometimes you do have to advocate for yourself or your child. But I highly recommend that you do that because I still use Braille all the time in the world. Bathroom signs, huge. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to know how to read woman or men on the bathroom door, okay? Bathroom signs are huge. Elevator numbers, that's huge. Numbers on office doors, just being able to reach outside the elevator door real quick and find on that panel where that number says what floor I'm on, that's huge. So it's definitely useful. It's practical. Now, am I going to sit down and read an entire 400-page book in Braille? I'm not. I'm too slow at it, okay? If you learn Braille at the same time that you learn how to read when you're 5, you're probably going to be a very fast, proficient Braille. That's how the brain is wired to work. I have friends who are totally blind from birth. They went to the school for the blind. They learned how to read Braille at 5 when the age was really wired to learn, and it's wired to learn language, right? And guess what? They can read Braille faster than a lot of people can read print, okay? Now I, because I didn't learn it until I was 17, pretty slow at it. But this is my textbook that I had. Now this isn't the actual book, but this is, I had to rebuy it, okay? But this is called Just Enough to Know Better. And I used a version, this is the latest version, I used a version of this that was my textbook in high school. You can buy this, you don't have to be a high school student. You can buy, you can buy it on the internet, right? Where you buy everything else in the world. The company that makes this is called National Braille Press. You can go on the internet, you can ask the Google National Braille Press, it'll come up. You can go to the search bar, you can type in Just Enough to Know Better, and you can get a textbook in your home that will start you out with the absolute basics. It'll teach you how to recognize your letters, it'll teach you how to recognize your numbers, and then as I said, there's all kinds of what are called contractions or shorthand. There's grade 1 Braille, which is no contractions, no shorthand, it's just everything is letter for letter, and there's grade 2 Braille where you got all the shorthand, all the contractions, right? So where like ER is broken down into one character, the letter A-N-D, right? That's the letter and is broken down into one character. And this book will teach you all of that. Now this is copyrighted material, so I really don't want to show you pages on it. So I'm going to try to just show you the Braille. Basically what you're going to have is you're going to have print on one side, and then you're going to have Braille on the other, right? And so it's going to teach you your letters. It's going to teach you your, so if you're having vision issues, it's a great way to learn. It's a great way for you to learn. And if you're trying to help out your spouse, your child, your parent, whatever, if you still have some sight, for me, still have some sight, it's great. I can still magnify, I can still zoom, and it's going to teach you all your shorthand contractions, because there's a whole deal. It's a whole language, okay? There's all kinds of shorthand contractions with Braille. It's a whole thing. So you can get that. Like I said, this is not, I just had to reorder this. I had a copy years ago. Somebody stole it. Can you believe that? Somebody stole my Braille book. Yeah. Really? I mean, really? Who does that, right? But really? Yeah. But National Braille Press also has all kinds of publications in Braille. They even have cookbooks in Braille. Yay for cookbooks in Braille, right? But they also do something called children's Braille books, and you've seen this on here before, is Baxter's little book here, right? We got Baxter's little book here. It's called Home Run. My First Baseball Game, right? And then there's pictures in here, and it's the exact same book. They just take the concept of like the Braille tape that I showed you, and they literally just put the tape. I don't want to show you a copyrighted information again, right? But they just, let me see if I can find a page. It doesn't have any words. So I'm trying to see if there's any words on that page or not, because I can't really show you a copyrighted material. But they do show you like the pictures. There's pictures, and then they put like Braille tape on there, right, over the words, and it's clear. So if you're sighted, you can still read it. And you can read to children, you can read to your children, you can read to your grandchildren. If you babysit, right, you can still read. I have this one here. It's called Lawrence in. There's a separate contraction for in, separate letter for the word the, and then fall. Lawrence and the fall is the same thing. With these, they literally take the exact book from the publisher, they unbind it, okay, they unbind it, they insert, let me see if I can pull out a clear plastic page without showing you. I'm going to try to do this without showing you anything that's copyrighted. Okay, and then they print out the text in Braille on a clear plastic page, stick it in between the print pages, right? And then put a spiral binding on it so that parents, grandparents, and babysitters can read to children. And that to me is really, really important, right? Literacy in the blind is really, really important in my opinion. My own father's illiterate because he's an immigrant, right? And so he didn't go to school. He came here and he started working from China. And he didn't go to school in China either because you had to pay for it then, and he didn't have shoes and, you know, all those things. And so literacy for everybody is important, including in the blind and the visually impaired community. And so for me, when I babysat, it was really important for me to have books that were print and Braille, so that I could read to kids, because I want the children that I babysit and the kids that I grow up teaching things to know that blind people can read, right? That's really important. The last thing, the last message that I would ever want to give to children is that blind people are illiterate and they can't read, okay? Because what do I talk about? You know, one of the big barriers that we have in this world is employment. And yes, they make screen readers, and most of us are going to use screen readers in the world, right? Yeah, you've heard mine all the time. Realistically, I use screen readers on the job when I worked in counseling, when I worked in mental health. Yes, it's important for blind people to have computer skills. It's important for us to know how to use a computer with a screen reader, and then to work and to interface, to make sure that that screen reader can interface with specialized programs. Because I worked in mental health, so I had to be able to navigate the chart work, navigate the paperwork with my screen reader, be able to type it in, right? Use the system. I had to make it all work together, okay? And so, having computer skills is what they're probably going to teach your blind kids in school today, and at independent living resource centers, and that's good. Computer skills when you're visually impaired, and everybody today, is good. You just about can't work jobs without them, right? So, but literacy is also good, because when I was working in mental health, we still have paper files. Yeah, we did. Now, fewer and fewer places have paper files, but some places still will. There might be certain things within your own office that you're going to need to label. And so when I have paper files, I literally use the same, you know, Slate knows this exact same one, but a same style of a Slate and stylus. I had my paper files. I just took a strip of paper, stuck it in here, typed out in Braille, right? Punched it out in Braille, the relevant, like the client information in Braille, taped that to the file. And I had all my files labeled in Braille, right, for me. And so that's basic stuff that you can do to organize yourself professionally as a blind person, organize yourself at home. It's really important to have the basics down, even if you don't read whole books in Braille, which is me. And so what I was talking about is that some of the biggest barriers that we have in the world as people with visual impairments is employment. And part of those employment barriers, in my opinion, is that the people who are hiring us can't imagine that we can do the job. They're like, how are they going to read? How are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? And so if kids grow up thinking, right, like blind people can't read, then they're not going to be very likely when they see us come into a job interview with a white cane or a guide dog to want to hire us for work. They're going to be like, well, they can't read. How's that going to work out, right? So when I babysat kids, I did have print Braille, and I was able to read to kids in Braille, and that way they grow up knowing people who are visually impaired or blind can read, right? Really, really important. So you can purchase these books off of National Braille Press. And I'll just be honest with you, if you're just learning Braille, they're a great way to just practice your basic words, simple vocabulary, right? By the time I finish reading a child's book in Braille, I'm like, whew, I'm exhausted mentally. Okay, that's all I can manage. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was a challenge, right? Do you remember when you were like in first or second grade and just reading through a picture book was a challenge, right? Struggling through the words. Well, that's still what it's like for me to refresh my mind in Braille, and for me to even try to get through one of these kids' books. I'm like, it's a mental strain. I'm trying to remember all the shorthand, all the contractions. What does that stand for? What does that symbol stand for, right? Trying to learn the symbol. Okay, that's TH. That's the, you know, that's this. That's O-W. That's O-R, you know, or O-U, I mean. That's WH, right? That's GH. There's different symbols for all of that stuff. So if you're learning Braille, you're definitely, there's a lot to learn. And just reading a kid's book can mentally exhaust you. So anyways, I think this video's probably been long enough. I think that's all we're going to cover today. I know it's been long. I know that a lot of people aren't probably going to watch it, but I want it there for those who need it, right? If you're like, I don't want to watch it, that's fine. If you need it in the future, guess what? You'll know where to find it, right? Maybe it's not you who needs tips and tricks on your yarn. Maybe it's your parent, your sibling, your spouse, your child who has visual impairments. And maybe you can come back and visit that video and be like, okay, I can take this from that. I can take that from that. I can learn how to organize, whether it's yarn, whether it's spices, right? Whatever it is that you need. Hopefully this video will be out there for anybody who needs help with some of this stuff. I will try to put in some Amazon links if I can remember in the description box for things like the Braille label maker and the Braille clothing tags. But that's all on Amazon. The books are from National Braille Press. So anyways, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section if they're related to this topic, right? I mean, you know, if you're asking me other random questions, you know, about, you know, gravity on, you know, Venus, I might not know it, right? There's plenty of things in the world that I don't know, right? But if it's related to this topic, I'll do my best to answer your questions. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And as you know what I like to end with, right? Creativity is for everybody, whether you see or you see like me, which is not in color and not in the day, or you don't see at all. Creativity is for you, and whether it's knitting or crocheting or sewing or quilting or beading or sculpting or painting or carving or weaving or whatever it is that you do, today is a great day to craft and create. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, happy stitching. Bye-bye for now.